Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Premananda, Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Gornitai. All glories to Sri Radha Radha Kanta. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The deities are really, I love the black around Gornitai. You know, that color there with the green looks beautiful. And yeah, Padma and Kaivalya, they're the standard right now. Of course, next time somebody else comes, I'll say that. But no, it's really beautiful the way they dress. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing with the Srimad Bhagavatam, the second canto, 10th chapter. What verse is it? 32? 31. Proceeding along. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Naruttamam Deving Sarasating Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pacharini, Nivasesha, Sunyavani Paspatade Sarani. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So text 31. Tvak charma, Mamsa, Rudira, Tvak charma, Mamsa, Rudira, Tvak charma, Mansarudira Medo Majasti Tattava Medo Majasti Tattava Bhajami. Oh, excuse me, it's Bhumi Api. Api, yeah. How do you say that now? Bhumi Api? Bhumi Api Tejo Maya Sapta Bhumi Api Tejo Maya Sapta Prano Vyomambu Vyayubi Prano Vyomambu Vyayubi Prano Vyayubi Tvakjamamam Sarudira Medo Majasta Tattava Bhumapi Tejo Maya Sapta Prano Vyomambu Vyayubi Chak Chamamam Sarudira Medo Majasti Tattava Boom up Tejo Maya Sapta Prano Vyomambu Vyayubi. Someone else, please.
Apo, it's not Api. It should be Apo.
Apo, okay.
Vakcharmamam Sarudira
Chakachamamam Sarudira
Medo Majasti Dhatavaha Bhumi Apo Tejo Maya Satta Prano Vyomambu Vayubihi.
There's no woe. Why is it Apo?
That Sandhi, it's got merged. So if you see the word to word, you will see.
Let me see. I don't see it in the word. Okay, well, whatever.
Swakarmamam sarudira Medo Majasti Tattava Bhumi Apo Tejo Maya Sapta Prano Vyamambu Vyayubi Vakchamamam sarudira Medo Majasti Tattava Bhumi Apo Tejo Maya Sapta Prano Vyamambu Vyayubi Svacharmamam Sarudira Medo Majasti Tattava Bhumi Apo Tejo Maya Sapta Prano Vyamambu Vyayubi Swakarmamam sarudira Medo Majasti Tattava Bhumi Apo Tejo Maya Sapta Prano Vyamambu Vyayubi Swakarmamam sarudira Medo Majasti Tattava Satta Prano Vayamambhuvahuti.
So the word for word is tvak, the thin layer on the skin.
Thin layer of skin.
Charma,
Karma.
skin.
Yes.
Mamsa,
Mansa.
flesh.
Flesh.
Udira,
Udira.
blood.
Blood.
Meda,
Meda.
fat.
Fat.
Maja,
Maja.
marrow.
Fat.
Ashti,
Asti.
bone.
Bone.
Dattava,
Dattava.
elements.
Element.
Bhumi,
Bhumi.
earth.
Earth.
It just says up, it doesn't say apo, it says up. AP, water. Teja,
Teja.
fire.
Fire.
Maya,
Maya.
predominating. Sapta,
Sapta.
7. Prana, breathing air.
Breathing air.
Vyoma, sky. Ambu, water.
Water.
Vayubi,
Vayubi.
by the air.
By the air.
The translation. The 7 elements of the body, namely the thin layer on the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone, are all made of earth, water, and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air. Please repeat. The 7 elements of the body.
The 7 elements of the body.
Namely the thin layer of the skin.
Namely the thin layer of the skin.
The flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone.
The flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone.
Are all made of earth.
Are all made of earth.
Water and fire.
Water and fire.
Whereas the life breath
Whereas the life breath
is produced by the sky,
is produced by the sky.
water and air.
Water and air.
Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The construction of the whole material world is prominently made by 3 elements, namely earth, water, and fire. But the living force is produced by sky, air, and water. So water is the common element in both the gross and subtle forms of all material creation. And it should be noted herewith that due to necessity, water being most prominent in the material creation is the principal element of all the 5. This material body is thus an embodiment of the 5 elements, and the gross manifestation is perceived because of 3, namely earth, water, and fire. Sensations of touch are perceived due to the thin layer on the skin, and bone is as good as hard stone. The breathing air of life is produced of sky, air, and water, and therefore open air, regular bath, and ample space in which to live are favorable for healthy vitality. Fresh produce from the earth, like grains and vegetables, as well as fresh water and heat, is good for the upkeep of the gross body. So the verse again is the 7 elements of the body, namely the thin layer and the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone, are all made of earth, water, and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air. It's interesting, Prabhu says here that healthy life means plenty of space, ample space. And they're saying, just like as he said, that they will leave the cities and come out into the country, and that's what's happening now. Everywhere on YouTube. It's like, not that I ever look on YouTube, but they're saying people are leaving the cities, going to the country, and then they'll show this young couple, and they're talking about how they can't take the city life anymore. They've learned a lot now by this whole phenomenon that's going on. And you see them out in the country. But of course, it's basically a form of city living in the country. They're not actually wanting to live in the country. They want to bring the city into the country with them, you know. So But this whole chapter, and actually the second canto, the third canto, part of the fourth, I think, and definitely part of the fifth canto, it's all about the creation. And this is what you call Sankhya, which means, Sankhya actually means counting. So some rishis have, there's 8 elements, then some say 10, then 24. They're just counting all these different elements of the material creation. And the point of understanding all of these things is to understand, well, first of all, how great Krishna is, how great God is. We have to, it's said that God is great. Well, how great is he? He's not just the Alpha and the Omega. God is great because he has created this entire universe and explains it in great detail. The scientists are constantly trying to figure out by some type of reverse engineering, by starting with the smallest element, and they don't even know what the smallest element is. They can't even see it. Like the God particle, they've recently come up with this concept of a God particle, which they know is there by the effect, but they don't see it. And just mathematically, it seems to make sense. And so then there's all the quantum physics, and then they go up and up and up and up. They start from small, and they try to go up like that and try to figure out how this world has been created. And but it's very simple. We can learn because we have imperfect senses. So with a telescope or with a microscope, you can look way out into space and try to see and figure out where it all starts, where it began, and how much distance there is between us and the next planet. But it's all explained by the descending knowledge of the parampara. It's right here. And this material world is not the all-in-all. This isn't where we belong. Actually, it's a very, as was said in yesterday's class, in one of the verses, it described the evacuation. How, that was all the Varata Rupa, because each thing is connected to the Varata Rupa, and then there's various demigods controlling each one of our senses. We have no freedom. We have no independence. We think we're independent. We think we're acting freely here. But we're actually totally, completely controlled. We turned our back on Krishna. We wanted to come here to try to enjoy, so he gave us this playground, but it's actually a filthy place. It's not very pleasant. It's not a nice place. Krishna doesn't like it. Even when Krishna descends, he never leaves the spiritual world. He stays. He brings his whole planet with him. He never touches the material energy. And yesterday it described that this material world is basically a stool. That's what it is. Not to gross anyone out, but that's basically what she was saying in that I think it was the 27th verse. And so that's what we come here for. I mean, Krishna could have just sent us down into a black hole, which is what this is. And if there was no sun, which is his eye, which is his mercy, we'd have no vision. We wouldn't know anything. But he gave us a place, and then he sent all this. He created this whole environment and his different energies in order to help us realize how much he loves us, and how much he cares about us. But this material world is no place for a gentleman. It's no place for a proper woman, a lady. It's not. We come because we're rebellious. We came because we've been offensive, either to Vaishnavas or to Krishna. And this is the prison house. There's different levels in a prison. Some prisoners are in a dungeon. Some prisoners are, sort of in the middle grade. Other prisoners have a very sort of almost like a country club environment. A devotee had to go to prison, and he was in this special prison where there were U.S. congressmen. He made a lot of good connections there. Very quote-unquote successful businessmen who cheated on taxes and so on. And they live a really nice, comfortable sort of, but they are in prison. They can't leave when they want. And if they violate anything there, then they'll be sent into the general population, which is not very pleasant. So we're in the prison house, and we're trying to make the best use of a bad bargain. And Krishna is constantly descending himself in every one of the yugas, or he sends his representatives in order to give us information on how to get out, and or to explain to us what we're in. We don't even know. You look up at the sky and you think, where am I? Who am I? What is this place? And you try to figure it out. They build telescopes. You have imperfect senses. You see imperfectly. They make telescopes. You look through the telescope. You'll never be able to see what you really need to see, which is that you're not this body. You can understand that this is not a very comfortable place. But unless you have the mercy of the disciplic succession, the mercy of a Vaishnava, you will not understand how to experience the eternal bliss that we're all hankering for. Many philosophers come and figure out how that this place is. They want to understand what to do. What is in Ecclesiastics, that book Vanity Karma by Jayadvaita, he analyzes vanity karma, which is, the Ecclesiastes, which is one of the books of the Old Testament. And this very powerful king, some people speculate it was Solomon or David, but he wants to know what to do. I've got all this wealth, I've got all this power. So first he thinks, well, maybe I should just acquire a lot of knowledge. But the more knowledge he acquires, the more there's a dead end. So then he thinks, well, I'll just I'll build beautiful parks for everyone. And so they'll all can enjoy, and I'll make a very nice situation. And he thinks, well, even if I build all these parks for these people, they won't appreciate it. And when I go, who will remember that I've done this for them? Or then he just tries to enjoy licentiously as a hedonist. But that has a dead end too. So in the end, you either become a Mayavadi, or if you have the mercy of a Vaishnava, you become a devotee. And fortunately for us, we have the mercy of a devotee. And Lord Chaitanya. So there's an interesting, I was thinking about this morning actually. There's a story in the 4th canto, I think it is, in one of the purports, in I think the 7th chapter. Lord Shiva is approached by a very poor Brahmin, and he wants the best benediction that you can give me. Please give me. He served him very nicely. Lord Shiva is pleased with him. Lord Shiva is very easily pleased, and sometimes this creates havoc. But in this case, Lord Shiva says, he's saying, I would like to have the best benediction. I don't know what's the best thing, but please, I know you know what is the best thing, so please, I'd like to have the best benediction. Because you have to know what is a benediction. You have to know what is good for me. I don't know what's good for me. I think maybe it's to become very rich, or to become very, have mystic powers, or to become very powerful. But maybe that's not the right thing. So, because we don't know what this life is, we don't know about birth and death, what is beyond this world. And so through the disciplic succession and through the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, we understand that we're not these bodies, and that we are eternally a part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in quality one with Him. So the Brahmin asks, I would like the best benediction you can give me. So Lord Shiva says, there's a person, his name is Sanatana Goswami, and I want you to go and visit him. He tells him where to find him. And the Brahmin offers his respect, and he says, Lord Shiva has sent me to you. He says, you can give me the best benediction. And then he notices that Lord Shiva Sanatana Goswami is sitting in front of a pile of garbage. And in the pile of garbage, it sort of folds, and there's a touchstone. which, anything you touch, and you can touch iron to it and it'll turn into gold. So the Brahmin immediately assumes that that's the best benediction, the touchstone. And he asks Lord Shiva, so can I get this touchstone? I said, sure, it's right back there, at the back of the garbage. So he takes it and he's very grateful and he's thankful. And he has the touchstone. And slowly he starts to think, wait a minute. If this is the best benediction, what is he doing in the trash? He has that much intelligence. So then he asks him, he goes back and he says, if this is the best benediction, why would you have it in the trash? Maybe there's something better. Is there a better benediction? Can you tell me? And he said, I will. But first you take the touchstone, go to the bank of the Jamuna, and throw the touchstone in the river of Jamuna. So he takes the touchstone, and Sanatana has promised to give him the benediction. This is a big leap of faith for him. So he takes it and throws it in the river. And so now he goes back, and Sanatana Goswami initiates him into chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Because the chanting of the holy name cleanses the heart from all the dust, from all the material desires. I mean, we can chant Hare Krishna, but first we have to go through the offensive stage, the clearing stage, and then reach the pure stage. When we took initiation from our spiritual master, that we had to promise not to engage in illicit sex life, intoxication, gambling, or meat eating. And then chant a certain minimum amount of rounds. But it didn't necessarily, it doesn't actually, give up the sinful activities that we know of that are most common, that are to distinguish us between animal and humans. Otherwise, we're just a two-legged, dvipadapasa, we're just a two-legged animal. So, and chant the holy names, and then, generally, there'll be a lecture on the 10 offenses. Avoid these offenses against chanting the holy name. So in other words, and said to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. In other words, we have to give up our material desires. We are the bhakti lata bij, the seed of that plant of bhakti is in our heart. But just like in the garden, they're constantly having to go and weed out all around the plants. I mean, there's actually I don't know if it would be considered a weed, but there's something that looks exactly like tulsi. It's called the holy basil. There's one growing by the kitchen. And it's not tulsi, but it looks exactly like her and is a sister in the same family. But so similarly, a lot of weeds in the beginning stages will look like the real thing. So sometimes with some of the material desires, they're very obvious, but some are subtle. Like, I want to be the best kirtan here. I want to be this. I want to be that. We have to be able to understand exactly what is material to determine what is. That's a sign of intelligence. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says the symptom of intelligence is to know the difference between material and spiritual. So we understand what is a material desire and what is a spiritual desire. You may think, well, if I think I mentioned in the class last week that when I first heard about the demigods, I was thinking, what would be the harm of worshiping a demigod and getting a lot of money and helping the movement? Well, because it's not spiritual, it's material. But Krishna is incarnated in that sound vibration. It is not just a symbolic representation of Krishna. It is Krishna. And by chanting purely, we can actually associate with the reservoir of all pleasure, of all knowledge, of all the opulences, and actually and love. We can actually develop love for Krishna. One time a devotee said, "Oh, I'm the most humble." Prabhupada said, no, Krishna is the most humble. Because Krishna is always serving us, no matter what we do. Right now he's standing there, no matter what we do or how we do it, whether we pay attention or not, he's always smiling at us. I've never seen Krishna not smiling. Okay, you could say it's just a statue, but you can tell the difference. You know when the deities are pleased and when they're not, if you're really paying attention. And Krishna is always happy. He's always willing to give us more and more of himself, more and more bliss, more and more realizations, so that we can escape from this ever rotating cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. And even for those people, like say in the Krishna book, Pastimes, there's a pastime I always found very fascinating. Because, first of all, Jarasandha was constantly attacking Mathura. So, in order to protect the inhabitants of Mathura, Krishna mystically transported them all to a city that he created in the sea called Dwarka, so that they wouldn't be harassed by Jarasandha and his armies. So everyone that was living in Dwarka was given this special benediction. So now there's a pastime where one of the inhabitants of Dwarka was actually very fond of the sun god Surya, and he was always doing service for him. So Surya reciprocated, and he gave him the Shamataka jewel. And the Shamataka jewel, first of all, when he first received it, it was put around his neck, and it shone so brightly that when he arrived in Dwarka, everyone thought the sun god had come to visit Lord Krishna. It was shining so brightly. So, and Krishna knew it wasn't the sun god. He said, no, this is Satyajit. He's very fond of the Surya, and Surya is reciprocated with his service. So, but he's living in Dwarka, and Dwarka has been built for people like him to protect him from the people that are like Jarasandha, the demons who are trying to create havoc in society. So, but he thought, well, also Surya, and he gets this jewel, and the jewel, well, whoever has it, and wherever it's located, there's no famine, there's no problems with weather or disease, and it produces 170 pounds of gold a day. And he installs the Shamataka jewel on a special altar. And Krishna says, well, this is very nice, but you should really offer it to King Ugrasena. Ugrasena was the king of Dwarka. Krishna was a resident there, but Ugrasena was the king. And everything, the best of everything, should be offered to the king. And Satyajit said, yes, I know. And Krishna's telling him to do this, suggesting it. He said, yeah, I know, but I can't give it up. I won't do it. So Krishna doesn't object. He says, that's fine. So then, sometime later, his brother, I think his name is Prasena, he goes out on a hunting. He goes out hunting in the forest, and he takes the Samataka jewel with him, has it around his neck, and a lion attacks him. And the lion doesn't care about the jewel. The lion's hungry, and he kills Satyajit's brother and carries the jewel away and just deposits it in a cave. This cave happens to be the residence of Jambavan, the king of the bears. And Jambavan sees it, and he gives it to his son as a toy to play with. And the boy's just playing with it. Some time passes, and Satyajit's brother doesn't come back. And then rumors start floating, started by Satyajit. That Krishna has done this. Krishna has done this. Krishna built a city for you. Krishna has given you everything. He's killing all these demons for you. What you have a palace here. And you're blaming Krishna? You think Krishna needs your stone? Your jewel? So Krishna doesn't like the fact that people are speaking like that. He's finding fault with him. So Krishna goes out with some others, and he chases it out. He sees because Jambavan killed the lion. So first of all, he sees the body of Prasenna, and then he leads him to the cave. He goes into the cave, and then he sees the jewel with Jambavan's son playing with it. He goes to take it, and Jambavan appears on the scene, and he doesn't recognize him. Jambavan is a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra, I believe it was, and he immediately tries to protect his son and protect what his son's toys. To him, it doesn't mean anything. It's a toy for his boy. So they get into a fist fight. And it goes on and on. It didn't just fight during the day and then rest at night. It went on 28 days and night. They were fighting, exchanging blows. And these blows were like powerful lightning bolts hitting the body. By about the 28th day, Jambavan is really getting fatigued and he can't do it anymore. He just can't go on fighting. And then he begins to realize, because he's been rendering service to Krishna. He's been rendering service to Krishna by fighting with him. This is something that Krishna likes to do. So, and he's doing it in a service attitude. And so he starts to realize, this is Vishnu. No one can fight like this. Only Vishnu. This is my Lord. And he immediately he pays his obeisances and begs for forgiveness. And then explain, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. And then Krishna explains why he wanted the jewel, that the whole story behind it. And Jambavan immediately turns it over to him, and he gives him his daughter, Jambavati. So in the meanwhile, he was in there 28 days, but the people waiting outside that went with Krishna, after about 12 days, they went back. Because, they thought, they didn't know what happened. So they all started I think they were worshipping Durga to see, to protect Krishna. And just as they started to worship, Krishna comes in with the jewel and a beautiful new wife. And so everything is good, and he calls Satyajit to his place, and he turns over the jewel to Satyajit, but he says, I still think you should offer this to Aggrasena. And he still can't bring himself to do it. Can't do it. It kind of reminds me of when I would first meet the devotees, and they would tell me, I'd hear the chanting, I would chant with them, say, why don't you come to the temple? I just can't do that. Or I'd go to the temple and say, why don't you move into the temple? I just can't do that. I still have some desires. So, in this case, Satyajit, he comes back with the jewel, and he realizes, he really feels, I really made a big mistake. He feels very guilty. This is wrong what I'm doing. And he goes back to Krishna and says, not only does he come back with the jewel, but he comes back with Satyabhama, one of Krishna's principal wives. And he says, please take my daughter, and here's the jewel. And Krishna says, thank you very much. I'm very pleased with your attitude. I will take your daughter as a wife. She's beautiful. She'll be a very good wife. But I don't want the jewel. I can see that you're very devoted to Surya. You should keep the jewel. Which was a lesson, that, okay, so you're attached to a demigod. And that's also an offense to the holy name. Thinking the demigods are on an equal level with Krishna. So he's committing, and so the holy name is Krishna. And here is someone living with Krishna, and he is thinking that I was going to mention that the word, anyway, so that he was, so you can see the parallel. As we're chanting, if we start thinking about, well, I could worship that demigod and get wealth, or just whatever material desire it is, you won't see Krishna. You won't get Krishna. Krishna is always there. We have to purify our hearts from our material desires. These things, what we're reading here, is very important. Especially if you're doing something like the TOVP in Mayapur. But it's not like we have to get, studies, this is and it's also important to understand that we're not independent. We wanted to be independent of Krishna. We're not independent. We're always dependent on Krishna. And this is not a nice place. And this part of the Bhagavatam explains how we're not independent, and that we're always dependent on Krishna. And it explains how we created, how great Krishna is, and how tiny and how small we are. I remember in the late 60s there was a song by a famous Sudra poet, singer-songwriter. And the main chorus was, "Dogs run free, why can't we?" Dogs aren't free. You watch a dog, he's always, or she's always, that dog is completely the servant of those senses. The head is very small, big ears, big tongue, big eyes, huge nose. Whatever he smells, whatever he hears, wants to taste, sees, he's running, he's being dragged around by his senses. Sometimes you see people in the malls like that. They're being, look at that store, look at that sale. They're being dragged around. That's not freedom. Freedom means, I don't need anything here. I am a servant of Krishna. So these parts of the Bhagavatam, it's important to understand them. Because somebody will say, well, why? He only had 7 days. Parikshit Maharaj only had 7 days. Why are you talking about the creation of the material universe? All the different layers of the Virata Rupa and the skin and the hairs and, this thing, that thing. Why? I want to know about the pastimes of Krishna and the cowherd boys. Krishna and the gopis. Krishna with his mother. There, Krishna, you see, in these pastimes, first of all, this is the creation. Then we see Krishna killing the demons. But in Gokula or Gokula, he's allowing his mother to tie his hands. Who can tie up Krishna? He's serving all of the gopis. He's serving all of the cowherd boys. He's protecting them. He's lifting the hill to protect them from the rain. There's so many pastimes where he's just doing service to them, for them. That's the life of the devotees who are intimately connected with Krishna. Krishna wants to serve us, and we have to learn how to serve him and appreciate everything that he's constantly doing for us. We're totally dependent on him. I think I've run over time. I'm sorry. So anyway, and anyone have any questions or comments?
Well, it brings me how Prabhupada is so kindly giving us so much it's like a wonderful, transcendentally sweet pastime, like you were talking about, the John Papa Joe.
Yeah, there's more to it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, how it's like so much intrigue, because then you see after that, because there's so much greed, I don't know, maybe greed or wanting the jewel or something,
Right.
that there was all this conspiracy to try to steal the jewel and everything. So you see, I wish I was more on that transcendental level, but when I do read it, I see the sweetness and the nectar that goes
Right.
on and on, and you read the books about the past.
And there's even some debate about Akura and I think what's his name? Kritavarma. Why they got involved with this conspiracy to
It was
steal.
Akura because he took Krishna away from the Gokula.
That's what Sridhar Swami says. Oh, Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami says that they were angry with him, and for Kritavarma's involvement was because he was jealous because he was supposed to get Satyabhama as his wife. But then I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti has a different view, that they were angry that Satyajit had been finding fault with Krishna, and that because even then later, when it's stolen, they blame Krishna for that. But Krishna, what? Go ahead.
I was also remembering from Krishna book that even when Satyabhama he was getting chased and he tried to take refuge or shelter for these two, Kritavarma and Akura, and they said no, you can't escape from Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and if he wants to kill you,
You're dead.
and no one's safe can say that you just, you gotta accept the fact you're gonna, that this is what's gonna happen. That they couldn't help him. They had no way of giving him any shelter but transcendental philosophical understanding that when Krishna wants to kill somebody, there's no way to say.
What's even more interesting is that Akura has a pastime before this, where he goes to Hastinapura for on behalf of Krishna to try to convince the Kurus, specifically Dhritarashtra, that well, first of all, he tells, don't worry, to Mother Kunti especially, you don't have to worry, because they're really fearful for their lives. And Kura says something to the effect like, your boys, their fathers are Yamaraj, Indra, you have nothing to worry about. You're protected by that. But then she just starts chanting Krishna's name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then he goes to Dhritarashtra, Akura does, and he explains, you can't win this. You know what's right. You were supposed to take care of these boys who are the sons of your brother. And then you can rule. In the meantime, you're the regent. That means you're temporarily taking care of the kingdom. But then you have to turn it over to the boys. And he said, I know. He said, Kura says, you can't win this. He goes, I know, but I can't help it. I'm too attached. I must do it. This is what I have to do. That's attachment. Too much attachment, even after so many instructions. Dhritarashtra had all the instructions he needed. In the end, he finally listened to Vidura, but it was too, then he still got some mercy at the end, but all his sons were dead. It's hard getting out of the material world. We're here so long. It's hard to give up those attachments. It doesn't mean that you just be disrespectful to your relatives or the demigods. We respect the demigods. We take care of our family. We have our responsibilities. We understand this is temporary material world, my real relationship, if I really care about my family, I'll become Krishna conscious. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. You're in charge. You're in charge. And if your father agrees.